Traci Bray here. Sorry it's taking me a moment to get on live with y'all. Sometimes technology still confuses me. In any case, I'm Traci Bray. I'm a medium in Kansas City, Missouri, and I read for people by phone all over the world, and also read in person, usually in Kansas City, but I do travel some. So if you're interested in me reading in your area, do let me know. Tonight, what I'm going to do is respond to a number of questions that y'all posed to me. Hi, Charla, Christine, Brenda, good to see you. Patrine, hello. Haven't heard that name in a long time. That's a pretty name. In any case, I'm going live to answer questions that a number of you had asked on the 24th when I posed to you, what would you like to hear me talk about on a live? Tonight I am not going to connect with the dead, and I'm not going to answer psychic questions, and instead I'm going to try to address that which you have posed to me. While people are popping on here, I want to mention that I am a certified research medium with the Windbridge Institute. If you've seen books out by mediums like Laura Lynn Jackson, who's written The Light Between Us, Happy Medium by Kim Russo, those are a couple of the 18 or so Windbridge certified research mediums that we have right now. If you follow my newsletters, which one is going to go out actually later tonight, just after this live is done. So if you're not on the newsletter list, not too late to get on it right now. Go to my website, Traci, T-R-A-C-I, Bray, B-R-A-Y.com. And on the contact tab, there is an email sign up. If you go to that right now, if you've not, and get on it, you'll receive that email. And in the email, there's a bit of a story about books and me, and that I've written. And there also is an offer in there for a 30-minute reading at 75% off. Regularly $125, now $75. So that offer will be in there also. So get on there and get yourself signed up for the newsletter. It's free. I don't send that many out. I don't inundate you, and I do not give your information to anybody. Okay, Deborah, Pamela, Kim, Gail. I'm seeing many of you popping on here. So I'm a research medium with Windbridge. I've been working as a medium, initially part-time, and for the last several years full-time. But I've been reading as a medium for over 30 years now. A medium is somebody who has the ability to touch in with specific people that have passed away. And when I do that, if I were reading for you, I would tell you that I prefer to start with no information up front, and that's because I think it's more meaningful to clients if I don't know anything. That being said, for people that I've read for before, which is about 30 to, depending on the month, 30 to 50% of my clientele are returning clientele, which I think is really great. I'm glad that people have found the work meaningful. But when I read for people that I've not read, or for people that I have read for before, I'm certainly certain in some area of my brain I recall the reading, but man, it's just not top front and center. So readings when they're for people that I've already read for, usually they're new. Sometimes I remember, but not always, and that's no disrespect to anybody. It's just a matter of, over the years, meeting lots of live people and reading for you, but meeting lots more dead people. Okay, Cindy, Karen. Hey, Karen, you got a wedding coming up. Nancy, Christine, Stacy. I'm glad to see all of you. So what I did was I took out on the 24th when I asked y'all what might you like to hear about the work I do. There were, I think, 69 questions, and I grouped them into 4 categories. And one is just a question somebody had about something prior to dying. And then about death itself, the third thing would be once the death of the body has occurred, what happens? And then the final category, I'm lying, there are two more categories. The second to last category is once we have arrived on the other side, what happens then? And then there's just a section that I called other. So I'm going to go through these things as best as I can. Hi, Pamela, Tracy, Kimberly, Michelle, Kathy. Good to see all of you. But what I'm going to do is go through these, and I doubt I'll get through them all tonight, and I'm not concerned about that because I'll go live probably over the weekend and finish that up. Sherry, good to see you here. So I should preface all of this by saying that these are my thoughts, my impressions that I've received from the other side, my experience in doing this work for over 30 years. I'm 62 years old, and I know that from the time I was a young child that I was already very aware of the dead around me. And when I was probably 5-ish, I encountered the first person that I had known in life that had passed away. So that's how long this has been going on. But I didn't know until much, much later that I was actually connecting with the dead, that I was a medium, that this was something different than a lot of other people do. So I probably won't see the questions that you're asking right now. What I'm going with is the ones that followers submitted way back on June 24th. I'll go through your comments later, but to answer questions on the screen now as they're popping up, probably not. People often compliment me on my hair, my jewelry, my clothes. I'm just going to do something vain real quick that I've never done. My hair is naturally curly. It's naturally dark brown with no gray in it, believe it or not. I'm following suit of my parents, neither of who went gray until much later in their lives. And my jewelry, some people will wonder what the stones are in my ring and my earrings, and that's what's called Baltic amber. You might know clear amber, where you can see insects and things in the dark golden color of it usually, or brown, reddish brown. Baltic, that cools very quickly, and it therefore hardens. Regular amber does. Baltic amber, from the Baltic Sea region, cools much more slowly, and that's what gives it its thick color, kind of egg yolky. And I just have always enjoyed Baltic amber. I've been wearing it off and on for years when I can find great pieces. And these were custom made for me with some stones that I had found. My blouse is from Anthropology Maeve, so that's the rundown on what's going on with me personally. Okay, so these questions are things that are my opinion. There is no way to prove scientifically a lot of what I'm going to go through here. So other mediums would, I'm sure, have different comments, maybe even totally disagree with things I'm saying. I would expect that, because I don't think that mediums see the same thing about everything. That is really vague, but I think it's true. I think all mediums have their own experiences, their own connections on the other side, and there weren't many questions, if any, about that. So the first area is prior to death. Shannon asked, when somebody, before they've died, she wanted me to comment on people who are in the process of dying, who see, maybe sometimes point, talk about people they're seeing, angels they're coming into contact with, pets that have passed. And I have heard this many times from many clients. And sometimes in readings, the person that's coming through will say, may probably remember, this would be to the living person, the client, you probably remember me pointing at Aunt Maudie in the corner or seeing angels around me. Sometimes my actual clients, the living, have seen these things. So that's not that uncommon. I wouldn't say I've heard it from the majority of people I work with, but I have, whoops, I slipped there. I have heard that many times. She asked about the process of it. I don't have a clue. It just happens. I think it's been happening for centuries. Hey, Sherry, Anna, Brian, sorry, I don't have my glasses on. So anyway, thanks for that question, Shannon. That was the only question about prior to death, sort of, that I got. I'll mention something else in a little bit. Now, I got a lot of questions about death itself. And I wanted you to know I'm rarely asked these, so it was fun for me to see some different ones. And they're in no particular order. I didn't have time to go through and put them in order. But when does the soul leave the body is something that Cindy asked. This is something I'm aware of it's individual, it's unique. I think for most people, the soul leaves the body. If we're with people, we know it. Some clients have described seeing, literally, physically seeing, I'll make the sound, whoop, up goes something. Some people see a mist. Some people, it's a feeling, a sense that, boom, the soul has gone. I'd say the majority of people are aware of that when they're with the dead person. Now, I have been aware of the soul leaving the body or beginning to leave the body much, much earlier than an actual death. One case I personally experienced was several years ago. I was with some people at a sporting event. And another adult walked up to us, and one of the women that I was with said, "Oh, Tracy, want you to meet," I'll just make up a name here, Millie. We've wanted to introduce you for a long time. And I was actually a nanny at the time, as was Millie. And the comment then was made, "We're going to be really excited to have you and Millie get together with all the kids this summer." And as I was sitting on the ground and Millie was standing, and as I reached up my hand to shake Millie's hand, and somebody had just said, "You're going to have a great time this summer getting together," I had the thought cross my mind, "No, we're not." And it jarred me a bit. I thought, what the heck does that mean? And there wasn't anything I could do with that at the time. We shook hands and chatted, and that was that. And Millie was killed in a car accident, I would say about 10 hours later. A young, vibrant gal had a new baby of her own. And so there was something there. I don't think it was me seeing that event. I didn't see that event. It was something that I could feel that was gone. So I'm aware of people that are comatose. I've read for people, for families, when their family member is comatose. Also when the family member is in a state of altered consciousness, such as Alzheimer's, dementia, and sometimes those people will come through in readings, regardless if they die in 24 hours or if they don't die for 5 or 6 months. So I don't have a firm answer to that question, Cindy, which is an excellent question. Tina asked, how long does it take for a soul to leave the physical body? That question that I just answered kind of speaks to that a little bit. Let me describe to you some car accidents I've been aware of, and homicides, as well as suicide. And sometimes in readings, for those of you that have had them, I'll be able to describe to you how the person died. Let's say I might say this person passed in a car accident. Does that have meaning to you? And the client will say, perhaps yes. And I will see characteristics of the accident happening, which I'll be able to relay to the client. And then I'll say that sometimes this is what has come up. I'll tell the client, whether or not the person died immediately. And let's just say for this example that they did die immediately. And what I usually see is the soul rises up out of the body and stops, I would say, about the height of a tall telephone pole. And they sit there for just a moment and look around, and sometimes they describe the accident scene to me. I might hear sirens coming. I might see other people getting out of vehicles to help. A variety of things that confirm to the client that this is in fact the accident we're talking about. And then as the soul kind of hovers, it then will broaden out. It's almost like a big panning camera view, usually within the local area of where their family, their loved ones, their survivors are. And they'll describe in just bing, 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 quick order of looking in on their mother at work, their sister at school, their dog at home. Just those are some examples. It's never the same thing. Is it always thorough and complete? Absolutely not. And then, boom, the soul is gone. So that is very quick. There are other accidents, for example, I've seen where impact happens, the body dies, the soul is gone. It just passes and crosses right over. So those are a couple of answers about this. And if you want clarification on any of these, feel welcome to write it in the comments. Again, I'm not going to be looking at comments tonight or questions. These are questions I received from followers. Thank you for following me earlier this week. If you've not followed me, if you haven't liked me, or loved me, but you can't love me on Facebook, you can only like me. Follow me or like me. I sure appreciate that. Okay, hi Jen, Brian, Francine. Thanks for following me. I'm going to move on here. Nancy B asked, can we feel or know death has occurred and not be present? So that would mean, that would be clients, yes. Absolutely. I knew I was in Missouri when my father died in a hospital in Iowa. And not just because I'm a medium, I don't think. I knew he died. I was sitting at my desk around 5 in the evening, 5:30, and just kind of looked up and went, oh, I'd better call the hospital. And I called and he had died that moment. I'd been thinking about calling the hospital all day and just was busy that day, did not get around to it. And so anyway, that happened for me. But I've heard many people that have just been asleep in bed and shot straight up and known something had happened to their child or a sibling or a good friend. I've known other people that have had the same experience when they're at work. So yes, that does happen. Why does it happen? I don't know. How does it happen? I don't know. Sometimes there's something a little bit different, and it's called precognition, when you know in advance that somebody is going to die. I have a number of people that have this run in their families, and that's precognition, knowing beforehand. Sometimes that comes in dreams, sometimes it's in a waking state. So I don't think that's all that abnormal or all that unusual. Okay. Nancy B also asked, is it possible for death to occur and that those present do not notice? Let me give an example of that. It would be, let's say the person is in a hospital bed who's dying, and maybe there are people there, children, with their parent who's dying, and they are sitting, around the room in chairs, maybe dozing off. But if they're awake even, Yeah, I think it's possible to even be standing near somebody and not know they've died, that death can be so quiet and so peaceful and so unassuming. I don't think it is for everybody. I don't know any statistics on that. But yeah, I think that's possible to not know. That it's truly, I don't want to get ahead of myself there, I won't say that. But it can be very peaceful. There are others that describe absolutely freaking ghastly scenes of the person gasping for air, having difficulty breathing, seizing, vomiting, a variety of things. Death is not necessarily a pretty thing. I think sometimes, nobody asked this, but I hear so many times of the loved ones being at the hospital, for example, and they go out to get a cup of coffee. They go into the bathroom. They're in the hall greeting friends. They hadn't left for 5 hours, but they stepped out to do that, or to run home and to do something with their children quickly. And their loved one, who they've been on a vigil with for days and days or weeks and months, dies. And my sense is that not everybody that dies wants somebody with them. I think that's true of animals. I think that's true of people. So I have never seen, ever, a dead person say, damn you, why weren't you with me? What they focus on instead is life. What was your life like together? Was there quality in the life? And they ask that you focus on that if you're fretting about not having been there. Okay. Rachel M asked an interesting question about life review. What's that like? And what that means is many of us have heard stories about when we die, that we, some people would call it judgment religiously. Others would call it a life review. Some people would say, my life flashed before me. And all of that, I think, can be called life review. So that's what we'll call it here. And what is that like? That is something I don't see in readings at all. Because when I see people on the other side, they've already gotten there, which I'll talk about in a minute. We'll move into that. This is a great segue question. But if you've read Proof of Heaven, a book by Eben, E-B-E-N, Alexander III, M.D., he talks about, and am I upside down to everybody? My God. I can't be. I don't know why I would be. A couple other people let me know if that's the case here. Somebody has written in that I'm upside down. I don't feel like it. But I don't see past life review, because I'm already there. But if you've read Proof of Heaven by Eben Alexander, he writes about a period, he had a near-death experience. And he describes in detail his journey between his hospital bed and when he thinks he made it to the other side, which I think his book describes better than anybody living who's been to the other side, the way I see it. Eben Alexander, Proof of Heaven. But I think for him, life review was probably in the period that he describes between, that wasn't always pleasant. He describes it at one point as not murky, but something about dark or murky jello, of just kind of trying to make it through, knowing he was making it through, but not quite knowing where he was or what he was doing. I think if you've heard of the Book of Records, the Hall of Records, Akashic Records, they're kind of one and the same in that those are records that presumably hold all of the information about our lifetime. And some would say our lifetimes, plural, which I do believe in, totally different subject. So what's the life review like? I suspect it's there. I suspect it is very, as far as our time goes, very fast. I don't think, now Eben was in that period for a few days because he was comatose. I think for most of us that die a regular death, which that definition can be quite broad. But in any case, I think for most of us it's bing. That life review happens really quickly. I also think on the other side we have the opportunity to take a look at what has our life been like, or lives. How can we change those things? Things like that. That gets into much more deeper territory than I want to tonight. So thank you, Rachel, for that question. Alrighty. Now I'm moving into probably where the bulk of the questions were at, and I'm just going to try to sit up a little higher than I am there. Maybe that didn't work, but and again, these aren't in any particular order. Probably the biggie I'm asked about, when does death occur, what happens, is who greets them, but are family members together? Are they with so-and-so? Are they with their loved one or loved ones? Does that include animals? And the answer to all of that is yes. Yes, they're often with loved ones. Yes, they are greeted by pets. Pets, I think, go to the other side just like we do, as well as other animals. I think all animals, living matter, it ends up, it doesn't die. Once something is created, it does not die. People wanted to know, are we greeted by only people we know? Most, I think, are people we've known, but also unknown people are there. A lot of times you may have heard me describe arriving on the other side. And to me, that is, I'm going to backtrack a minute. Let me use the car accident where somebody dies immediately and passes immediately. It's as if the door of life closes, and the door to the other side, also called heaven, eternity, many people have other names, opens. Bing, bing. Just like you would get up right now, close a door, open a door. Just like that. Just that fast. Just that simple and easy. I've never, now that I think of it, seen somebody tugging on a door. Open up, let me in. I've never seen that before. The door opens and over you go. Through it you go. So anyway, yeah, known people are there, sometimes unknown people. I started to describe, a lot of times I see a family gathering like up over a hill where there's a big park shelter type of thing. And sometimes there are hundreds of people there, old and young, all healthy, all vibrant, all well, all interested and engaged for the most part. And that can include family, it can include friends, colleagues, and sometimes in the colleagues realm, not necessarily at that point, but later on the other side, particularly with military people, firefighting people, people that have worked in groups, or I'm going to let Lily the cat up here. Lily, come on. Come here. They cluster, and sometimes I think they contribute to things on the other side. Equipment development, policy, practice, well-being of their living colleagues. And sometimes those people can go back over centuries, not just the here and now, the generations that you can remember knowing. Some of you knew great-grandparents. So that's what I'm talking there. And for those of you that are writing in comments and questions, I am not looking at those tonight, just so you know. I will look at them later and perhaps add those into another live. But for tonight, I'm all that's here other than the cats, and this is what I can manage now. So keep your questions coming, but no, I'm not going to look at them tonight, and I'm not connecting with the dead tonight, and I'm not answering questions, psychic questions tonight either. This is about questions for those of you just tuning in that people have asked on the 24th, when on Facebook I asked what questions you have about the other side. Okay, so people that had asked those questions, Nina or Nina, Tracy T, had asked that. This is a great question. I don't think I've ever asked this, or been asked this. Chris W. asked, how are the dead aware of their passing? And I think that's a really interesting question, particularly when you consider people that have died in automobile accidents, people that have been murdered, people that have been killed in combat, a fast, unanticipated death. How do they know? And my take on it is, on the ones that I see who are people that have made it to the other side, it's just a given. They know somehow. I don't ever get shock of, how did I get here? I don't get, where am I? It's almost as if they always automatically know. Now there is, sorry, I kicked the stand there. There is the issue of ghosts and people that don't make it to the other side. This is not what I'm talking about tonight. I'm focusing on people that have made it to the other side, which honestly are 100% of the people that I've seen in readings for over 30 years. The business about ghosts is, yes, they happen. Maybe I'll talk about it another time, but most people make it. The ghost thing, I think, is an invention of media, of TV, of movies. It's fascinating. Some of it, I think, is very true and accurate, but it's not what I work with or deal with. I'm going to take a drink. Okay. Let me move on here. I'm in the portion that I mentioned about once death of the body occurs, what happens? Tina asked, do they stick around, Tina B, do they stick around and keep an eye on the family? Or do they just leave? I mentioned a moment ago some people that I've seen that have died in accidents that will hang out for just a few moments, check and make sure that their loved ones are all right. It's almost like a parent tucking a kid in at night. Everybody okay? And it doesn't have to happen just at night, but that does happen. So most of the time, no, I don't see that. Now, a number of people, and this may have happened to you, were at the funeral. In particular, something has happened where the dead person has let you know that they're around. Does that mean they haven't crossed over yet? No, not at all. I think once they pass, I think they have the ability to be in more than one place at a time. So not to worry about that if that happens, and just rejoice in those things when they do. Let's see. Melinda and Tracy and Nina also asked, how are they aware of their passing? Again, I think they just know. That one I don't have a real clear answer on. And then Carol asked, is the person closest to us in life, is that person always the one that greets us if they've preceded us in death? I don't know the answer to that. I will say in many of the sessions that where I've read for people, it seems like people that are greeted almost always know who's greeting them. Often it's a parent, a sibling, a spouse or a lover. Sometimes it's good friends. It's generally within that close familial area. And when I speak of this, of these things, I want to say again, these are just observations that I've had in doing this work over the years. Whether they're right or not, only we will know when we get there. But they're consistent enough that I feel comfortable in talking about them. Okay, great question so far. So now I lied. Once the death of the body occurs was not the area where I had the most questions. The most questions came in this next area. Once the person, the soul, the spirit, I call it a lot of different things. In Windbridge, the research center that I mentioned that I work with, volunteer with, the dead are called the discarnate. So there are a variety of different words for the dead. But once the dead have arrived on the other side, again, heaven, eternity, whatever, what goes on then? So there were a ton of questions here. Tina asked, do they come back to check on us? Now, I mentioned about right after the death, but once they're there for a while, let's say somebody's been dead for 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 months, 3 years, do they check on us? My sense is yes. I think part of the job, if you will, of the dead is to both intercede when they can and be intercessors when they can. You hear that intercessor. It's kind of a biblical word. You don't hear it used too much. Does that mean that they can influence things? I've heard it happen. A number of people that have near-miss accidents, particularly vehicle, or have been involved in a horrible accident where law enforcement, doctors, whatever, will say you should be dead. Some will have memories of a loved one being there specifically. Some will have a sense that somebody was there helping them. Sometimes some really unusual things happen too, where a car that was heading at 100 miles an hour in one direction ends up stopped in the other, yet nobody ever saw that vehicle change directions. Just odd things. And I believe that that can be the dead as intercessors. I think that angels can do that. I think spirit guides can do that. Loved ones. Just a variety of people and or spirits, if you will. In writing my book, which I'm working on with an editor right now, I've realized that I use the word spirit in probably 5 different ways. So I'll try to remember to explain to you what I'm talking about when I use the word. Okay. Let's see here. Got to get back on track. Mary C. and Tina B. asked, can the dead hear us? And I believe the answer to that is yes. I think they can be many places at one time. I think the majority of time we don't have a clue if they hear us. And sometimes people get signs that they've been heard or acknowledged. I think signs are there a lot more than we realize, and certainly even more that we don't acknowledge when they happen. If you're not getting signs, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong, doesn't mean they don't love you, don't like you, don't care, aren't there. It just means that it's not happening. And, so many questions you probably have on that, and so many questions that I don't have answers to. But let's see. So can they hear us? Yes. And that tells me to tell you, talk to them. Do it out loud. Write them notes and letters. Think about them and talk to them in your head. I think there's nothing that spirit likes better than attention most of the time. Some people have asked me before, am I bothering them? Am I holding them back from crossing over? I've never seen a spirit that felt like they were being bothered, ever. I have never seen a living person holding somebody back from passing or crossing. Now, I will say that I've had a few people come through where the family, the survivors, had to make the decision to continue with life support. And I think I've only ever seen one out of that question being asked hundreds, if not thousands of times. Did we do the right thing? Were they glad we did what they did? They're always glad. One, they don't want to prolong their own deaths when it's imminent. There are some people living, I think, that are afraid to die, that perhaps don't let go as quickly. But for the most part, I think people are glad to go. And 2, I don't think that the dead want to see us as living suffer any longer either. But I'm getting off track here. Jill asked, Jill F., what age are they? Man, if this isn't a conundrum for me. Age has never been anything consistent in all the years I've reading. Doesn't matter if you die at 95 or 5 months in vitro or 5 years old. You might, let me use the in vitro example. If a baby, let me go a little earlier. If a baby's life ends at 2 months in vitro, 2 months of pregnancy, I might, and they come through all the time, doesn't matter what the cause was, if it was an abortion, if it was a miscarriage, if it was a result of an accident or a homicide, when a baby dies. Let's say the baby, this was 25 years ago. That soul might come through to me, that spirit, soul, individual, discarnate, might come through to me as a 25-year-old. They might come through to me as just a couple of months old. It's never been the same. Usually I would say with elderly people that have died, and particularly people that have died not looking so great, they're suffering, they're sick, they are eroding. They always come through vibrantly. Great color skin, great skin tone, healthy, happy, smiling, well-nourished, people that were down to skin and bones. Sometimes come back, or most often come back with meat on their bones. They look great and healthy. So that kind of answers the age question, but doesn't. To me, age can be all different kinds of things. Sometimes, too, when I'm 62, when somebody I'm reading for is my age, just as an example, and let's say their mom comes through, I might see, it's almost a photograph in my mind of their mother when she was 25, sitting in a bathing suit on the edge of a boat on a river, looking like a real babe. And sometimes they'll show themselves as that way, even though the mother might have died at 95. So the age thing, there's no consistency to it in the readings that I do. Let's see what else we have. Brenda, Kathy, several others ask, do they miss us? And this might be the most startling thing you hear from me. Sorry to take the wind out of your sails. In the readings I give, no, they don't miss us. The reason is they can see us all the time. They know what we're doing. They know who we're with. Are they with us 24/7? My response to that is, oh my God, I hope not. So anyway, they do have a good feel for what we're doing. I think a lot of times it's hard for people to grasp when I read. Chinese food might come up. And I'll say to the client, did your mom like Chinese food? They'll say maybe not particularly. And I'll say, when's the last time you ate Chinese food? Well, I had Chinese food for dinner last night. We went to such and such a restaurant. To me, that's mom saying, I'm with you. I know what you're up to. I know what you're doing. So they are with us in pain. They are with us in gain and happy and sad. And but through that, they don't miss us. The missing is a human thing, I believe. It's, I think when we've known some of the greatest joys, we then are very familiar with some of the deepest of sorrows. And I think we all would be very glad, the majority of us would be very glad to know that our loved ones are not grieving like we do. Instead, sometimes I think, nobody asked this, but I've seen when one dies, regardless of age, it's almost like if you equate sending a kid off to college. And a lot of kids are like really excited to go. Get out of my way, mom and dad, let me run, let me have fun. And I think it's that way for people dying a lot. There are new things to learn and to explore and to see, and people they haven't seen in decades, and people they never got to meet. There is no boredom on the other side, ever. I don't think I've ever thought of it in that way. I need to take a drink. And I'm just looking at the screen while I did that. I see Barbara and Raquel and Christy. Thanks for being on here. And again, I'm not answering questions tonight. I'm looking at questions that I've been asked by request on the 24th of June, 2019, and am addressing those tonight. So, where are we at here? Somebody asked a really good question too, about time and do they mature? Do they age? I'd have to say yes to that in regard to babies, because sometimes, as I mentioned prior, a baby that was miscarried, stillborn, whatever, 25 years ago might appear to me as a 25-year-old. Same with, children that pass. A kid that drowned when he was 14, I might see him 20 years after death where he'd be 34. And yeah, I've seen that before. I've also seen people that were quite elderly that come through as much younger than when they died and more youthful. So again, that age thing, I don't know. I don't know how that works. Okay. Do they continue to learn? That was asked by Rachel. And some of those other questions were asked by Mary C., Stacy A., Alicia D., Brenda B., and Kathy R. But do they continue to learn? And yeah, I think learning is part of it. Whether that is if you all of a sudden decide to paint and you've never painted. It might be studying further things that you were always interested in. It might be traveling to locations that you never had the opportunity to go to or want to go back to. So learning is a continual place. I've seen for children that have passed, I've never seen them in a classroom. I've seen them outside on athletic fields playing before, but that tells me that there are schools there as well. I want to go back to the baby thing because somebody had asked a really interesting question about embryos and that would be being frozen for in vitro fertilization purposes. What happens to them? And my sense is that once an embryo has been fertilized, that's the point at which that soul conception, when that soul is something that I can, through a reading, can be aware of. Does that mean that's all there is? No, that's just what I know. So I can only tell you what I've seen and sensed. Okay. Great question here by Tracy T. Why do they not come through sometimes to us? And I can use myself as an example. The dead, my dead, rarely come through to me. I think that's because I'm really comfortable in knowing where they are and that they're okay. They're well. They're at peace. They're peaceful. They're happy. Does that mean they're giddy happy? Heck no. Most of them were never giddy happy to begin with. So why do they not come through, though? The big answer there to me is, I don't know. If you've seen or read the book The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, S-E-B-O-L-D, Alice Sebold, excellent writer, and I've read, I think, all of her books now, and in some way, shape, or form, those books usually allude to people that have passed away, having the ability to communicate back, although I don't think that's the necessarily the sole focus of her books. But again, like Eben Alexander, I don't know Alice's experiences in life like I do Eben's, but some of the things she writes to me are like, oh my God, she knows this other side that I know. So in The Lovely Bones, the story is about a little girl who is murdered by a serial killer. And part of it is about how her parents long to hear from her and her sibling that she's okay, and that others do. And then on the other side, sometimes it's, if I recall correctly, the little girl's frustration in trying to get in touch with people that she wants to. And what happens is a classmate of hers is who ends up hearing from her. And I think we would ask, watching that or reading that, well, how come that happened? And my response to that is because it can. Sometimes I think the living are so transfixed on, with all due respect, with nearly a manifestation of their loved one coming and addressing them, that we miss all the signs around us of the person actually being with us. So there can be a lot of reasons of why it may seem they don't come through. I think there are some that probably don't. Do I think that's anything personal? Absolutely not. I think it can relate back to the college example I gave. They're off and running, man. Maybe they've felt so horrible for so long, be it through depression and a suicide, or from a horrible illness, a debilitating illness that they've been down and out from years. Maybe it's a while before they come back, and by then, who knows if we are in the space to recognize that it's them and accept that it's them when they do come through. So many variables. Okay. Lisa J asked about adoption, and what I'm going to speak to is if you are adopted, who will you, let's see, who can you expect to hear from? Let me do it that way. Now, from my angle, when reading for somebody that's adopted and I don't know it, sometimes I'll be addressing their father that's passed, and they'll tell me, no, my father's living, and then later they tell me the living father is the father that raised them, and they don't know if their actual birth father is passed. So, and then let's say that same person, let's say instead that my sense was that the birth father was passed and that the father that raised them is gone, they all can come through. Just because we're adopted or raised by different people has no bearing on people that love us coming through, people that love us continuing to be concerned about us. So they're there. Sometimes people come to me to find parents that they never had the opportunity to meet. And that is work that I do. I also, on that vein, do a lot of genealogy work for people. I think twice this week in readings we have discussed those questions. So if you have questions about that, schedule either of those things and write your questions down and we'll go through them. Tracy T asked, do they know that they're loved and missed? And you betcha they know they're loved and missed. They see that all the time. And when you think of do they grieve, do they miss us, I think it concerns them when we are so pained about their loss. But I think they know that there's a process of grieving, and that process is unique and individual to all of us. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who many of you have heard of, that wrote about the stages of death. Kubler-Ross, before she died, said that those were greatly misconstrued, that those were not, in fact, meant to be a bing, 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 or bing, 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 that we go through. People wander back and through those at different rates and speeds, and some never hit some of those factors, if you're familiar with what those are. Okay. Do they always hang out with us? I've seen some people that do, and others that don't. Again, I don't think they're with us 24/7, and I think they have lots of things to do, people to be with, things to see, places to go, and their life doesn't stop at death. It keeps going. The soul, my tagline is, the soul continues to live. Life is everlasting. And by living, that means they continue on. Okay, let's see. Do they come near us? Carol asked that, as well as the Carol L, as well as the last question. And absolutely. sometimes I've told people, do you feel often that something's on the back of your neck, or tapping the top of your head, or tickling the bottom of your feet? And there are tons of examples I could give that I've heard from people where they know physically, actually, that person is in their presence. Some of you have smelled your loved one, maybe a favorite cookie that your grandmother made, or a perfume that your mother wore, or aftershave your brother had. So anyway, yeah, I think they are physically right around us. When I started this work, I used to think heaven is up here, hell is down there. And what I realized after a few years of doing the work, I never saw a hell. Does that mean that's something nobody asked here? Does that mean there's not a hell? No, it means I've never seen it. I've never been shown it. Whether it is there, I don't know. I often have thought by a variety of things I've heard from the living that hell is on earth. There are some hellish things going on here. There are hellish ways people die, and there certainly are hellish ways that people live. Let's see here. Sorry about the sirens in the background there. You can send a good thought up, a prayer, whatever, for the EMS workers, as well as those are fire trucks, as well as for whoever needs them. So do they come near us? Yeah. I've heard a number of people that have what I call visitations, and those are usually when the living person is asleep. They may be initially thinking they're in a dream, but then they realize when they wake up and report this, that they say things like, he was here, I know it, he held my hand, he touched me, I could see him, I knew he was here. Those are visitations. I think that actually is the loved one coming in. I think I started to say also that I thought there was heaven up here, hell up here, and what I didn't finish saying is now I think that it's in the middle. It's almost, do you remember in science class in middle school where your textbook had that overlay? Often you'd get that in the body, where you'd add in the circulatory system to the skeleton, to the skin, to blah, 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 and you could see through each page. I think that's almost what like the other side is. It's a layer that we don't see, we don't feel, we don't sense. I think the other side, I think somebody did ask later on, what's it like there? What's heaven like? What's the other side like? And I think I describe it as very much like Earth. There is food, there is drink, there are people, there are events, there are parties, there's playing cards, all kinds of stuff. And so it's like if you took a globe of the Earth and you put sticky tape on it and pull the sticky tape off, being Earth is living, tape comes off, we're on the other side, and the other side is just like Earth, except there's no pain, there is no war, no hunger, no poverty, no bullying. I don't know if I said no illness. It's like all of the unpleasant stuff goes away. Okay, I want to stare real quickly because my clock doesn't come up on here. Oh my gosh, I've talked lots longer than I intended. And what I'm going to do is end this here, and we'll continue this at another time coming up soon. I'm Traci Bray. I'm a medium out of Kansas City. I do readings by phone and in person. My website is my name, tracibray.com. That's TRACIBRAY.com. Please follow me here on Facebook at Traci Bray Medium. I'm on Pinterest under the same name, and Instagram. And there is an email sign up on my website. I hope you'll sign up that for the newsletter that this year I'm only 1 month shy of doing it once a month. So thank you so much for listening. And if you get on that email, there is a special offer for a 30-minute reading by phone at a 40% discount through the month of July. You can find that through the scheduling tab on the website too. So thanks everybody. Have a safe and good evening, and I will connect with you again soon. Bye-bye.